Boruto 2 Blue Vortex has now revealed that Sarada is ready to face Hidari, and this time by herself. And the reason this is the case doesn't just lie in the fact that she has awakened and used her newfound powers with her Mangekyo Sharingan and all the abilities it possesses, but it lies in the fact of the self-understanding that she now possesses, which indicates that she is ready to take on Hidari. As one very important aspect of both Hidari and Sarada's character is their self-identity, and the steps that are necessary to reach the point of understanding who they are. Being able to answer the question that a lot of people struggle with: who exactly are you? This was the same question that Hidari asked Sarada, but she could not answer it, just like Hidari couldn't answer it himself. This is the dynamic between Hidari and Sarada, and especially when you pay attention to how this annoys Hidari quite a bit. Not only was his self-identity his main focus since the very beginning, but when he is asked by Konohamaru and the Leaf Police Force who exactly he is visibly angry. But while Hidari can't answer the question of who exactly he is, and he hasn't gotten any closer to answering that question ever since chapter 11, Sarada, who has taken a completely different approach, now has the answer to this question of who exactly she is. And unlike what Hidari believed was required, she didn't have to devour anyone at all. Now, for us to understand their dynamic and the growth that Sarada has now displayed, we have to go back to the fight between Itachi and Kabuto, which themes matter quite a lot to the conclusion that both Hidari and Sarada are drawn to. Kabuto is somebody who longed to find out exactly who he was. We see him from his backstory that he has no memory of who exactly he was before he was saved by the orphanage. He has no parents and his home was completely destroyed. Essentially, he was thrown into this world without any reference of who exactly he is or could end up being. But through the orphanage and his mother, he finds a person in which he can attach his self-identity. The person who gave him his glasses and took him in. And him attaching his identity to this person is why his identity instantly dissolves when he finds out that his mother didn't even recognize who he was when they were forced to fight against each other. Now, the pivotal moment for Kabuto that showcases the approach that he ends up taking is found when he meets up with Orochimaru in his darkest moments. Although it could be argued that Orochimaru manipulated Kabuto, Orochimaru really did tell Kabuto what he believed to be true and the path that he should take, as it was the exact same path that he was taking. Orochimaru tells him that he lacks sufficient intel by which to define himself, saying it's just that neither the glasses, your name, nor the fact that you're a child were things that denote who you really are. Adding that if he is not satisfied with who he is, he should simply add more to himself, just like he does with the constant experimentation which forces him to undergo rebirth and evolution over and over again, bringing him closer towards the perfect him. So let's break this down. Kabuto, who is confused, lost, and emotionally vulnerable, he spends his whole life living identities that other people have given him. First as a war orphan, then as a spy, and now again with somebody with no identity, just like where he was at the beginning of his story. You merely lack sufficient intel with which to define yourself. This is what Orochimaru ends up telling Kabuto. This is Orochimaru telling Kabuto that he is not broken. He just doesn't have all the puzzle pieces to see the full picture of who he is. The roles and traits you have been given, essentially your name, your glasses, and you being a child, if he is not satisfied with those identities, he can keep adding more and more to himself until it feels more like you. This is saying that you can pick new skills, new powers, new personality traits, new blood, new genetics to add upon yourself, essentially copying pieces from the world around you and adding them to yourself to build a new version of who you are. Like a blank slate, you are just painting on and adding traits that you see desirable so that over time it can become your true self. Now, if you pay close attention to what is being discussed, you would see that in this case, Hidari is mirroring Kabuto's actions and the beliefs that Orochimaru had at the time. Even if we simply check their backstory, you would see that it is quite similar. Hidari was born without a true understanding of who he was. He just woke up and there he was. This is similar to Kabuto, who woke up one day with no memory of the past, just like Hidari woke up one day as a conscious being and the desire to find out who exactly he was, just like Kabuto had that same desire from the beginning to find out who he was. Both characters are looking for an identity, and then someone comes in. For Kabuto, it is Orochimaru, and for Hidari, that person is Jira. They end up learning from those people that in order to find out who they are, they essentially had to consume the world around them and continue consuming that world until they become whole, forming an identity that they are content with. Jira says this to Hidari. This is why he ends up picking Sarada as his target. As we personally know, but Hidari doesn't, that his genetics are from Sasuke, which is why he has a connection to Sarada. But he personally doesn't understand that, as he hasn't come to the realization of who exactly he is. And with Kabuto, through Orochimaru's teachings, he believes that by consuming people and copying their abilities, he will become whole and feel like him. But is this the right approach? Will this approach lead to Hidari figuring out who exactly he is and being content with that? The way to answer this question is by looking at Kabuto and where exactly it led him. And when you do that, you will realize that this ultimately is not the right path towards self-identity and finding out who exactly you are. As no matter how many cells that Kabuto adds to himself, or even Orochimaru's blood and power, he still feels like it isn't enough. This is what he says when we have the words of Orochimaru that echo in his mind while he is adding his blood into his body. If you are not satisfied with what you have so far, just find other things to add to yourself from here on out. But Kabuto, no matter how much he adds to himself, he still says that it is not enough. This is still not me. But how would Kabuto ever know that it is him or not if he doesn't know who he is in the first place? And if he doesn't know who he is, how is adding other people's traits, personalities, and abilities going to make it any easier to find out who he is? And when it comes to Hidari, the same question is left unanswered. How does devouring Sarada help him in any way find out exactly who he is, as he doesn't even know who he is in the first place? It will never feel like him cause he doesn't know what him ends up feeling like. This displays that Kabuto and Hidari's path is wrong and will never end up working, just like Kabuto didn't end up figuring out who he was by the path of copying other people's genetics and essentially devouring them. This never worked out for Kabuto. So the question is still here. How exactly does one figure out who he is, and how exactly did Sarada do it herself? With what Sarada does, it's quite similar to what Itachi did and wish he had done a lot sooner. I believe that it is quite perfect that Sarada has to go through this step before using her Mangekyo Sharingan ability for the first time. She had to do something that Itachi believed could have prevented the Uchiha massacre from taking place, and that is known as shadow work, which led to her accepting exactly who she was and moving towards the process of individuation and finding out her self-identity. So to break it down, we have to analyze some of Carl Jung's work, as this is what he is known for. So if you look at this diagram right here, you would see what Carl Jung believes people are in their totality. And to make sure things are kept quite simple, we will just focus on the persona, self, and the shadow, and will not discuss all the various intricacies that could make this video a whole lot more complicated, but I promise that it will still make sense at the end of the day. So the persona is basically the mask that you wear in society. It is basically what helps you fit into society, but can hide your true feelings. When it comes to the shadow are those hidden parts that you dislike or ignore. So you can view it like the persona is basically you showing out your strengths, what you are known to be good at, while your shadow are the things like your weaknesses that you hide, your anger, your jealousy, your selfishness, all those weak aspects of yourself that you are hiding from the world around them so that you are not judged is what is hidden in your shadow. Ignoring your shadow can lead to problems, but accepting it can allow you to grow. Carl Jung's big idea is to be your true self. You must recognize your persona. Don't let it control you, but face your shadow, accepting your flaws, and then you can be yourself. Yourself, in a simplified explanation, is your persona and your shadow combined. Your whole authentic personality, the real you, when all parts of your mind are working perfectly. This is the goal that Carl Jung believes life is about, becoming your true self by balancing all parts of your personality. Now let's analyze it when it comes to Sarada. Sarada's persona is this disciplined, ambitious ninja who is aspiring to become the Hokage. She embodies strength, responsibility, and she carries on the legacy of the Uchiha clan. Her persona is shaped by those societal expectations, her father's reputation, and her desire to protect Konoha. Also the reputation of her being the leader of Team 7, as she has to carry on that leadership role to eventually become the Hokage. To maintain this persona, she suppresses all sorts of vulnerable feelings that do not maintain this image. And this is now we move on to her shadow, those repressed emotions that she deems as unacceptable. And those are her feelings of weakness. The fact that she feels that she is not living up to the name of her father, and she is not as talented as Naruto and Sasuke are. The feelings that Boruto and Kawaki are the ones dealing with every sort of major issue, while her and Mitsuki are always kicking back. The feeling that she will never be able to live up to that name, and all the pressures of her being an Uchiha like her father. All those vulnerabilities that she is suppressing. Now, when it comes to her true self, which she ends up accepting in this latest chapter, where she ends up saying that the first thing I must do is accept who I am, the weaknesses and strengths that I possess, what we see take place in this most recent chapter is her figuring out who she is, her authentic self. Balancing her persona, those Hokage aspirations, and her shadows, those feelings of vulnerability, and her accepting help from other people and admitting her limitations. Her moving on to the step of individuation, which is moving beyond the Uchiha legacy, or the fact that she wants to become Hokage, and defining her own identity. This is what Itachi says to Kabuto, saying, I didn't know who or what I was at that point either, but I finally understand it now, that to know oneself is not to achieve everything and become perfect. It is to know what one is and isn't capable of. Basically, acknowledging your strengths and weaknesses, your persona and your shadow. By doing so, you can become your true self and know who you are. This is the stage in which Sarada is now at, and why she is now ready to take on the likes of Hidari. Because when Hidari will now ask Sarada who exactly she is, she will have an answer to that question this time. And unlike Hidari, she has proven that she doesn't need to devour anybody to find out who exactly she is. She did so by acknowledging herself. Just like what Itachi says, those who cannot acknowledge themselves will fail, meaning that Sarada will be able to defeat Hidari and save her father Sasuke due to the fact that Hidari cannot acknowledge who he is, while Sarada can, and that's unless Hidari finds a different path or the same path that Sarada has to finding out who he truly is. So to find out more about whether this is possible or not, you have to understand more about the Senju. So watch this video right here to understand exactly what the Senju are.